I'm going to start with a prayer, and then we're going to go through this a lot faster than I thought we were going to go through it. Without my bulb, even. We had this wonderful idea that we were working on when I was meditating a while ago. We were going to show the title headings, and then I was going to explain it all, and I was going to use the whiteboard. So now I'm going to have to do both on the whiteboard. So this should be interesting. So I'm going to start with a prayer. And so I ask everybody to be quiet and just quiet themselves. And what we're going to ask is that the great source of all creation, the great God that made all things, bring the energy through the Time Lords who have created the great pulse of creation that made this physical universe under instruction from Source, come down through the great energies of the hierarchy to ourselves and surround us with their light and their love, so we may hear their message today and understand from it what it is that is to happen to us shortly and how their role in it is to be, so we may fully understand these great, incredible miracles that are to happen. Amen. So I'm going to start out, first of all, by explaining to you what the hierarchy is. My little connection here will work. So, it'll be interesting. I'll have to write it up now. My writing is not the world's best. So, number one. Now, I'll just abbreviate it. What the spiritual hierarchy is, it represents basically, on this level, three different aspects of many other aspects of hierarchy. It's not on? Is it on? No?
It's on.
This is really a full moon day.
Yeah.
What will go wrong next? I am speaking. That's the other one. It's plugged.
Yeah, start now. Say something.
Okay, can you hear me?
So we have some real gremlins tonight.
This is Gremlin Day. Well, Uncle said he was going to play, but they were all playing tonight.
Oh, they work?
Oh! Okay, now we have vocal application. I was afraid that with my hoarse voice, people wouldn't hear me in the back row. So.
Put it on the table. Yeah, put it on the table.
No, it won't. It'll destroy the table. It's a card table. It's not very strong.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want some help writing, I'll give you that.
There you go. Move the table back.
It's okay. Because eventually, I'm hoping before this is over with, I will have my titles back. Okay, it's at it again, right? Okay, is that it? Okay. So, what we're going to be talking about is the hierarchy, and I was explaining what we have on the present plan of the hierarchy is that it exists in the third dimensional level on three levels. The lowest is the so-called jivic level, or elemental level. These are the group of energy patterns that are in charge of the entire maintaining of the physical universe itself. The second level are basically broken up into groups that are called angels, and these angels are basically to aid and assist all humans and all intelligent beings throughout this earth plane with what they have to do in their tasks. The final higher level are the ascended masters and the archangels, and their job is to coordinate the bottom two levels so that these levels can be passed up to the higher levels of the hierarchy. So the way you can look at this is, I call this the physical plane. And this is the level that is controlled by the diva energies. And then aiding all other people are the angels. Now everybody has guardian angels around them. At least two. Some may have hundreds or thousands depending on their mission. This is something that all people should understand, and they are there for you to use for your own abilities and whatever you need to manifest at any time of the day or night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are there for you. Matter of fact, many times you may be meditating, or you may feel quiet, and you may feel in your room that there's windows closed and you'll feel a breeze coming across you. That's your angel saying, I'm here. What do you want? So all you have to do is just call upon them. They're there for you. Their greatest number one joy is to find something that makes you happy and able to manifest things that keep you happy. For they feel that everything in the physical universe is based on joy and manifesting abundance. So they are there constantly to aid you. What a lot of people forget is that they are there, and people will get into depressions or upsetness and not realize that they have to just use them to manifest their realities. So this is one of the things they have made a big point of me for having people understand here, is just do that. Every time you need to, just close your eyes and tell them, I would like to have this happen to me. If you do it enough, with enough intent, it will happen. Because they want to be able to totally please you, because they're there for you. They're your guardians. They're like your, you might say, your spiritual parents. Now above them, there sit, I'll just call them the AMs, the Ascendant Masters, and the AA for the Archangels. What they are there for is to coordinate the different angelic and devic forces to make sure that they maintain the energy flows in the universe on the physical level. And they pass those energies back and forth. You might look at them as the overseers. I'll use that. As overseers, their job is to maintain and make sure that the energy patterns are passed back and through the dimensions. So, and these levels go all the way up to the 8th level, and they're repeated again and again. So what it means is that whenever you ask one of your angels for something, if they can't immediately do it and they see there's a strong will for you to do it, they pass it on up here. And then these come down and check on it, and if it's something that requires something even more than they feel by themselves they can't do, they will send it directly up as high as it's required. Thus, every human being should realize that they are being guided and watched. And all they have to realize is every one of us are important spiritual beings, and that we have support. We are not alone. Now, that is what the spiritual hierarchy is. And what they are trying to do and say, and what I'm trying to say here today, is they are there for us. They are beings who know and understand that when we are incarnated from the spirit into this physical universe, that they have a responsibility to aid us in achieving our purposes for being incarnated in the physical plane. That's, for instance, why one of these groups, the Abundance Group, is doing what it's doing. It's doing that because the time has come for the great age of light to occur, as is part of the prophecies, and that's why they are manifesting this energy. They had to make sure, as I was explaining to you, these energies come down and they have to be balanced. When the energy balances are proper, then things can be manifested on a large scale, as for instance with the Abundance Program. That's why they've been asking us to constantly use our energies, because we're a part of this, because we're right here at the bottom, but we're the key point on the bottom here. Because that's what it's all about. Spiritual energy manifesting itself into matter, and then matter acknowledging the manifesting by giving back to the spiritual to create this huge circle. Now when we down here get into woe and we don't complete the energy transference, that screws up the entire process of creation. So then they get concerned and wonder what can be done to make this happen. The first thing they want us to have us know is that the angels are there for us, and the second one they did was to understand that they are here to aid our processes. So that's part one of the process. This is what the hierarchy is there for. Now the next one I was going to be talking about is the involvement with the Federation. Now, the Federation came to this planet because the hierarchy decided it was essential that there be human beings acting as what is called guardian or stewardships of life forms on the physical universe. As I just explained, the basic physical universe is controlled through these elemental devic energies which are overseen by the angels and the archangels. They need a spiritual physical being to act as the intermediary and make their situation of balancing much easier. That's our responsibility. Therefore, our responsibility is to basically this planet, and secondly, to that which makes the planet happen, which are the spiritual hierarchy. We are the intercession group, the interloper group. We are here in their behalf, and they are willing to help us get into full consciousness to do their job that we required and were told we would be able to do. And therefore, they looked around for an instrument that would provide them with a purpose for completing this whole task. The Federation and its human contingent agreed to this entire principle. Once this was done, what it meant was that then the Federation agreed to a bunch of situations and basically what you might call a spiritual contract. The contract said that this planet would be raised up as the hierarchy wished, and that the life forms on this planet would be utilized as the hierarchy wished through the Davic energy exchanges. We would not interrupt this. Unfortunately, since the times of Atlantis, humans have been doing just the opposite of the contract. We have been constantly destroying these Davic energy transference points by ravishing the planet, destroying life forms, etc. This has created a vast amount of difficulty, and the way it usually happens in the physical law is that as follows. Physical law says there is an equilibrium that occurs. I'll just call this EQ. What humans are supposed to do is to basically maintain, I'll just call this MA here, is to maintain the equilibrium. We act as the spiritual interloper. We then maintain it by giving back energies required by monitoring both the devic energy exchanges of the different groups. Now, devic energies are basically plants, animals, and what I call the earth elements, which are the sky, the land itself, and the water. So this is what the devic energies are in charge of maintaining. We come along, and our job is to take these energy patterns and build upon them, because they have a basic pattern of change. There's an evolutionary pattern of how these things from time to time change on this planet. Our job is to monitor the devic energies with the angels, the ascended masters, etc., and act as the physical interloper between these energy patterns. That's why humans, since the beginning, have had this ability, which they've called magic or ritual, that has been able to alter and change how these elements act, such as certain chants that create rain in the modern universe or certain other principles. Now, what we have done is, of course, to develop this whole materialistic concept, non-spiritualist concept with governments, etc., that have said that this equilibrium process can be altered at will. That we have this quote-unquote science which can alter this equilibrium, and that we don't have to worry about the reaction to it. And as we have learned in the last few decades, this is an erroneous concept. So what is now happening is the hierarchy, which has been monitoring this entire process, has been forced to do things to prepare for a change, because that's what the hierarchy wishes. The first basic change occurred in the early 70s. And then we'll get into other things from that. What happened in the early 70s was, because of the imbalances created on Earth, and indirectly that affected the entire solar system, the sun began to react with large-scale promenades. And what happened was, and just to give a brief example, okay, here's the sun, we'll call it S. and over here is the Earth, which we'll call E, and out here is the asteroid belt, which we'll call A, realizing, of course, there are quite a few other planets in between, but I just want to use this for an example. Now, what happened was the coronosphere of the planet, of the sun, we'll just put it around here. What happened was giant promenades began coming out, and the promenades are simply giant pieces of plasma that are ejected from the sun, and they go out into the solar system and create what's called the solar wind eventually. So what was happening was these huge, incredible promenades were being created because of imbalances, and the result was that a few of them had the potential to be huge enough to directly affect the existence of Earth. So what happened was, and this I'll be getting to later, in order to cool down and prevent problems from happening, a hologram was first placed around the Earth, and then a second one was placed around the entire system. The reason for this was to protect the entire planet from disaster. This was done by the Syrians because they are related directly to the guardianship role of the Federation through their complete program of cooperating in their energies with the cetaceans, who are the other guardian group on this planet beside humans. This is an example of what the Federation has been doing in order to prepare this planet. Now, the big giant argument that went on in the Federation after the initial hologram was established in the early 70s was, should this hologram be maintained? Because there was a big argument was, are Earth humans really in their mutant form from Atlantis no more than a failed experiment which should be allowed to continue to its extinction level, or should the reconstitution of the experiment, which was also possible, be done? So this was the big argument that went on. Now, the initial aspect was the Pleiadians and the Arcturians said, well, the karma of this was set up in Atlantis, we have to complete it. So they asked that the entire planet be allowed to have this hologram taken off of it, which would have opened up this planet to not only the unbalances of the sun, but would have also opened it up to what was also coming in, which was the photon belt. And basically the photon belt does three giant effects on planet Earth. Effect A, it pressurizes the atmosphere. By pressurizing the atmosphere, it causes extremes of weather. The second basic difficulty is, by pressurizing the tectonics of the Earth, the lithosphere itself of the Earth, it can cause massive disasters, namely earthquakes and volcanism. The third danger was that the actual hydrosphere of the planet, the ocean, would be affected by the pressure changes, and there would be a change for tsunamis and other difficulties, large windstorms in the ocean. So they said, well, if this happens, then for sure by the early 90s, these people will be a giant footnote in the history of this planet. Now, the cetaceans simply stated the following with the hierarchy, and they said that we do not want this disaster scenario to occur. We would like Plan A, which is to reconstitute the mutants and make them into what they originally were before the whole game began in Atlantis. And so they then asked that this photon belt be utilized as the way to change the entire pattern. So this required, first of all, that we'll be talking about later, which is a hologram to be put around the entire star system to basically protect it. This is a protective wall of light that will act to prevent radiations from getting in, and plus they reconstituted and strengthened the hologram around the planet. So this then set up the scenario that we are talking about, at least I've been talking about and other people have been talking about that I've heard of, which is basically that this entire humanity is about to be completely altered and return to its original condition, which is full consciousness. Once we are fully conscious, we will be able to become what we are meant to be. Now, because of this whole process, it meant that the different aspects of the hierarchy had to begin a process of gradually preparing people for what was to happen. So they began, first of all, monitoring the original roll and getting the switch. So what they began doing in the 70s and 80s was doing lots of visions with people of messages that first talked about doom, but doom that would change if the people on the planet became more light-oriented. So this basically was what was happening up until the late 80s, and now they're beginning to do the next step. Now the next step is telling people about the light that is about to occur. And people around the world now are getting visions, etc., of various angelic beings, or Mary, or Christ even, talking about the whole process of an incredible age of light, a new incredible age of peace and joy that is about to happen when the spiritual hierarchy and all the dead that have been occurring on this planet will again become one with the physical beings that exist on this planet. This is the beginning of the whole process of allowing this planet to fully understand that there is now a change, that the initial disaster scenario has been changed, and the Federation has completely committed itself to allowing a change to occur for the positive aspect. Namely, that we will be allowed to totally become the guardians that we were originally meant to be. And this then leads to the whole concept of the transformation itself. What will it be? So, I'm going to erase some more. Now, many people have heard about the ascension process and have wondered, what is it? What is happening on this planet right now is a giant genetic reversal experiment of unbelievable proportions. It has been occurring. Many geneticists have begun only recently to notice it, but the evidence indicates that it began the last few decades. Basically, what is happening to all of us is that we are being raised in a frequency of our auras, and slowly but surely all of our DNA is being prepared to be completely reconstituted. What this means is the following. Maybe I should go to blue for this one. Okay. We'll use the black one as Marianne wants me to do. Okay, this is what has basically been happening to us. What we have right now is, I'll just call it a two-pair DNA, which is the basic aspect of all that makes everything in us happen. So, we originally, when we were full conscious beings, we had a six-pair DNA, which meant we had basically single to six. Aha. Thank you, guys upstairs. I made a mistake. Okay. Now, what is happening here is a very basic and important aspect. Now, when the original genetic experiment that turned us into what we are today occurred, all the other stuff was left behind in our basic makeup. What you could look at would be like if some person who was a barbarian went into a library and just ripped up all the books in the library and just totally threw them on the floor, threw water over them and everything, and just ran out of the building and said, "I've destroyed them all." But they're still there. What's going to happen is, and it's been happening, is the following magic. Let's make pretend there's this incredible, unbelievable magician, a super Merlin. And he can go into everybody's library and he can say his magic words, and all the papers come back together again, and all the books, and totally constituted, go back up on the shelves. Now that basically is what is going to happen to us. And it has been happening in a very strange and complete way to humans on this planet for the last 2 decades, and especially in the last 2 decades. What has been happening, scientists are discovering, first they discovered that in every cell in the body, the 6-pair DNA chemistry exists. The second thing they discovered is that the 1-pair DNA is slowly being mutated, which means the following. What they're setting up with this 1 pair is they're setting it up as a master reconstitutor. When the right energy comes into it, and they're discovering that there are interdimensional receptors on this one pair, what happens is signals will come in, and it will act like the transmitter unit to all the other parts of the cell, and bingo, the sixth pair will be reconstituted. Now, what does that mean to our bodies? What's happening already is, when I talk about the chakra system, I talk about the change from a 7 to an 11 internal chakra system. Already people are noticing, like on the heart chakra, that many are developing the heart chakra into two systems, an upper and a lower. Basically what's going to happen is the upper system is going to become this thalamus center, which I talk about, and the lower center is going to remain itself as the true heart chakra. So this is happening. The brains of many humans right now are being changed. It's being recircuited. Everybody here has probably had a time when they thought they were getting Alzheimer or getting senile. What is happening with that is that the short-term memory system is being affected first. So they are recircuiting that entire system first. So everybody is going through a genetic preparation for the change into a full brain capability. What that simply implies for us as human beings is that we are being prepared for this great change. The next thing that happens, a lot of people are noticing, happens with the vision center of the brain. What's happening is, presently under a very mutated system, in the back part of the brain, I'll just do a bunch of things because I'm a lousy drawer anyway. And you have your little eye here. What's happening normally is that through the various aspects of vision, which is the basic visual nerve systems of the body are connected into the rear part of the brain. What's happening is these parts of the brain are now being recircuited in many humans right now, especially people who are meditating a lot, etc. It's being reconstituted into what is called this visionary center, which is more than just, we call it here on this planet, I call it second sight. So we are slowly redeveloping this second sight capability, this psychic powers. This is happening to lots of people. Basically what they're doing is they're setting up the full conscious brain in humans. The other thing that they're doing is the nervous system has to be totally prepared to pick up a lot more data than it normally would pick up. So to do this, they're having to add and change how certain muscular motor systems are done. So a lot of people have probably noticed things such as funny back spasms, leg spasms, etc., and wondered why are these happening. The reason for that is because it's essential that the body be prepared for what's about to happen. So these are the things that people have been noticing. People might also have been noticing strange headaches at times, or buzzing in their ears. These things are simply information is being changed because the brain is a holographic instrument. Okay. Okay, I can speak again? Okay. What is happening with the brain is it's being prepared for this incredible ability to see not only on this particular third-dimensional plane, but on the other planes. This allows people to know that many times you will probably feel like you're almost in a dream sometimes and you still wake up and you'll still be seeing things floating around in the room. This is because they have adjusted you when you're sleeping, and when you get back into full consciousness, what happens is your conscious brain, the cortex, says, we don't like this anymore. We want the old stuff back. And so it chucks you back into consciousness. So that's why you will see funny things. You'll sometimes have trouble focusing when you wake up. Because what's happening is when you are asleep, the way your brain operates is more toward how a full conscious brain would operate, and allows them to therefore alter and prepare you for what's about to happen. So little by little by little, the people on this planet are being prepared, and this is something that is happening worldwide. This is not just something happening in the United States or Canada. It's happening in Mexico, it's happening in Asia, it's happening in South America, it's happening in Australia, It's happening all over the place. Geneticists are noticing that all this stuff is occurring. So what is happening is we are being prepared for this mass transformation process. Now, one might ask, what is the role of the spiritual hierarchy in this whole process? What they are doing is the following. Erase.
What is that word there? Science or
Thalamus. The thalamus is the key to your immune system. Up until about 20 years ago, people thought it was a vestigial organ. They later discovered that it was the key to the immune system. And they wondered then, if it was so important to the immune system, why was it that it atrophied so fast? It's the second largest organ in the body when you're first born. It's a huge thing. It's big almost as your hand in a baby. It's a very big organ. By the time you're an adult, it's gone down to roughly the size of your thumb, this part. So you can see the amazing amount of shrinkingness that happens in it. It's located right up here, just below your throat, in the upper breast, right up in here. So, what it does basically is it is a control unit for your immune system. And the way they discovered it was they started taking it out of adult rats, wondering why suddenly rats got sick and got all aged up and died very early. And basically what happens is they discovered, and what they told me also about this whole system is, the thalamus is highly sensitive to light and to radiation. So one of the side effects of having the firmament, which they talk about in the Bible, coming down in the great flood, was it opened up our atmosphere to radiation. That immediately shrunk the thymus, and that shrunk us as well, because our bodies had to adjust to this sudden loss of vibrant energy inside of us. And secondly, it shrunk our age down immensely. They talk about Methuselah before the flood, 800-900 years, and then suddenly you talk about other people living for 100 or 200 years, and then bang, 50 or 60 years, and you're an old person in the old Bible. And the reason for that is because the body had to adjust. And the way it adjusted first was that people got much smaller than they were. In the time of Atlantis, people were roughly 7, 8, 9, 10 feet tall. By the time you get to the early Egyptian kingdoms, the average size of the human being is roughly around 5 to 5'3" tall. So virtually the human being went down by 50 to 40% in height and dropped immensely in lifespan. So you can see what the change in our bodies did to our entire abilities to exist on this planet. Not only that, it changed us from a being that had full consciousness to a being that suddenly was forced into the reality of denying that which had been a part of its life, which is why in the Bible they talk about being one with the spiritual energies and the angels, etc. Now to do this is a process that's very difficult for a lot of us to do and maintain. Although the beings coming in now, the young ones, as I like to call them, the star seeds, have this vibrant energy inside of them. And if we just keep their memories going, they won't lose it, which is a part of the whole process, which I like to emphasize. Give myself some more board space. Now, let me do quickly through the rest of my lecture because I don't want to keep people all evening, because I could do this. Should I get started on this and go forever? What I want to do is go through the rest of this kind of quick as I'm near the end of it. So there's a lot of this is stuff that is from the first lecture, which is the landings and the role of the hierarchy in the landings. I'm going to put them together. The way the landing scenario is, as I stated before, the landings are going to occur because it's essential to do so. As people are finding out who have been involved, as you just said, in the abundance program, the government's attempt to maintain its control is everywhere. It's increasing at leaps and bounds, and the reason for that is because they know what's happening out there. As Reagan made a statement in the early 80s, which has been said quite a few times, he said, "What would people think if there was a war going on out there?" And things have been done such as nuclear weapons being brought up with the space shuttle, etc. I even had a friend that was even talking to me about that procedure and talked to a CIA agent and said, big deal, of course those things happen. Like it was nothing. Of course, most people today would probably be aghast if people learned that nuclear weapons are being put into orbit against international rules, that space satellites are being used to try to find out what's going on, that one of the reasons why the space telescope was made like it didn't work properly for a long period of time is because they wished to use it to mainly monitor the ships that are out in what's called the Oort, which is the far distant aspect of our star system. And that's roughly about 6 to 9 billion miles from the sun. What is happening out there is that a huge, incredible fleet is being prepared to come in. And the coordinate for this entire process is on Mars, a huge city. And what is going to happen with the scenario is as follows. I'm going to go over it very quickly right now. Like I said, I want to keep people forever here. What the whole procedure is as follows. One, before the whole thing happens, there will be a huge, incredible amount of calming energy being brought into this planet, more than has been brought in before. Right now, they are working on roughly a 52-day period, and at the end of every 52-day period, they up the energy about 10 times. And when you go through that at the 5th time around, which is 260 days, they up the thing 100 times. They've been doing this roughly for the last 2 years. That's why every so often people will notice that karmic returns are very fast. You'll also notice that you get sick a lot faster, and a lot of the illnesses you get sick with go very fast. The reason for this is that the energies in the body are being completely re-altered by the entire process that is occurring. Now, when the landings occur, the amount of energy that has been brought in will be so much greater than has been done before that those people with a lot of dark energy around them are going to probably get very sick from it. It's going to be almost as if somebody put a light storm around the planet. Only the energy isn't going to be seen as light. It's going to be felt as a calming energy. It's going to be felt like the ultimate religious high of all ultimate religious highs for everybody. This is the first phase of the landing. The next phase is going to be messages from the Federation that will go in all languages simultaneously around the planet, and they will simply say that an amazing and wondrous thing is about to happen, that all the governments on the planet are about to go goodbye, and that people should not be upset or be fearful that people or certain other elements will take advantage of it. Then will come the landings themselves. And the landings are going to be something that are probably going to be the most amazing thing, and people will be talking about them for generations after it happens. Because basically what's going to happen is all the ships will be surrounded on their way down by angels, which will make themselves visible to every human on this planet. So it is going to be an incredible, unbelievable sight. And surrounding it is going to be music played, which, as many people who have had near-death experiences have described, this incredible music. This is what is going to be totally around this planet when the landings happen. And also, as the landings happen, a message will be used in every person's head saying that this is the coming. Because this, in many ways, will be almost like a second coming of Christ, because with this energy coming down, the ascended energies of the masters and the angels will become one with people on this planet. This is the coming mass landing. It is to be an experience that I'm sure people on this planet, as I said, will be telling their grandchildren and great-grandchildren about. I was there when this happened, and let me tell you about it. It was incredible. And this is what is about to happen to this planet. As I said, the role of the spiritual hierarchy in all of this is to oversee it and make sure that it happens in a way that aids to the joy of people on this planet and helps us to understand that the creator energies that exist in this universe is here for one purpose: to allow this planet to be in balance and allow all humans to achieve their purposes on this planet in freedom and mostly and most importantly in joy. That's why in the U.S. original Declaration of Independence, it was the concept of happiness, the pursuit of happiness, was thrown in favor of what originally the English had put in, namely John Locke and his two treatises on government. So that's why that was thrown in. And this is what's about to happen. Now, as I said, this is like a second coming. And it will actually become like a second coming when the photon belt itself arrives. Now, as I stated previously, we are in a giant, incredible hologram. Now, what happens is when the photon belt comes in, it will have a scenario of 5 to 6 days, which I've explained before. I'm not going to go into it right now. When it is through and we're into the light itself, we will then have had full consciousness. The firmament will have been raised up again around our planet, and we will be able to have full and complete contact with the spiritual world that is now just only occurs to some of us in a near-death experience or when we actually die. Or some people have it as a gift because they have that remnant of genetic material in them that allows them to still have the second sight. So this will be a complete gift for all of us to have. And we will be able to change over and maintain ourselves in a true spiritual full conscious government. And this is what the angels assisted by the Federation will be doing. That's why they consider it to be a second coming, because in a way the whole concept mentioned in the Bible of the return of a godlike government and a godlike time of light on this planet will occur when this is happened, both the landings and the photon belt itself. And that then leads us to the envelope itself. The envelope will remain around the planet aiding us until we actually finish up the 17-year period, go into the fifth dimension, and come out near Sirius and return to this galaxy as a full conscious being in a crystal planet and in a crystal star system. And this is what will be our destiny. This will be in roughly the year 2012, 2013. When that happens, time as it exists on this planet will cease, and we will be in a new time. This is why I like to talk all the time about it, about galactic time and its various aspects, asking people to learn about it. We are about to enter into a whole new civilization, a whole new beingness, and a oneness with the angels and the archangels and the devas, which up to now have occurred only in certain passages in the Bible in Genesis and in certain aspects that are talked about in Revelation. This is also mentioned in various prophecies in various other religions, Hindu religion, Buddhist, etc., the various religions of the indigenous peoples of this planet. They all talk about this age of light coming, when we will be one with the angels, or as they like to call it, the sky people. We are about to enter that period. That's what basically my message is all about, is to alert people that they are here, that they have to look within themselves and realize they have all come here to be a part of the puzzle that is to come together to form this new, incredible, unbelievable galactic civilization that we are about to put together on this star system, which includes the Earth, Mars, Venus, and various moons thereof. We are about to experience something which might be created or thought of by people as a miracle. With that, I always like to think of the various concepts that Arthur C. Clarke has put forth. One of his laws of science was that any science that is sufficiently advanced from any technology is looked upon by that lesser technology as magic. What is happening to us is a magic. But it is a magic that is different than any other because it is based upon a whole new technology, a whole new science, a multidimensional science created by full conscious beings in cooperation with the creator energies of the hierarchies, not only on this level but on all the dimensional levels, up to the Time Lords who made this physical universe, up to the Source which created the Time Lords, the great God creation force itself. When this universe, as we know it, was created some 50 million years ago, It was done for one purpose, to allow humans and other sentient creatures to come together in light and bring this energy of light throughout creation so that it could be experienced by all beings, whether they be simple energy spirits of an animal or of a plant or just of a planet itself, or of a more multitudinous form of multidimensional consciousness such as humans, cetaceans, and the many other forms of life that exist in this universe. We are here to act as the guardians of this energy, to bring it to its fullest extent and to act in ways that allow it to reach its full maximum intent, namely to allow creation to flower as it must flower, as it should. That is why we are here. That is why the angels, the archangels, and the ascended masters have come around us to aid us now. So this is the time when we will again become one with them. The experiment and the karma related to that experiment is over. We are now in the transition period. In 95 and 96, roughly in that time frame, we will begin an immense and incredible change. So know, as you realize here in early 94, that you are on the verge of an incredible change in reality. This change should not be looked upon with any fear, but only be looked upon with the great love that the angels and the archangels who have come from the great one light of the God force have come to aid us in bringing us up to what we are to be. For we are creatures that are spirit in matter. And we must learn that the matter that is around us must not control us any longer, but it is the spirit that animates this matter that is the key to all creation. That is what the next aspect is all about. We are to prove ourselves that we are physical light, and as physical light are capable of performing incredible magic with each other and with ourselves together as units and as groups in many multitudinous ways. That is what the entire message of this lecture is all about. And I hope that people who have gone through the first part of this lecture will have some questions. I'm going to have a break. We have a break right now, or can we just go into the questions? Well, I want to give them more time because they told me to speed this up. Well, no, we're going to give about 45 minutes of questions. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. It's okay with everybody? If not, I will continue. I want to find out what is the group mind on all of this. I continue and then we have a full question period, or okay, then we'll continue. Then they were telling me they wanted to make sure that everybody didn't stay up too late. So let me go over the holographic envelope a little more and a few other things in more detail in the next few minutes, and then we'll have a break and then we can go into the whole thing. Let me give you an idea of what happened first in the early 70s. Okay, I'll call this, with the big E here, I'll call this Earth. And out here, I'll call this the Sun. Now what was happening was, because of the unbalances around this place, it was affecting the energies here. So the Sun began getting unstable. And the result was it began issuing what are called promenades, which are these huge ejections of plasma. Some of these ejections of plasma would make the Earth seem almost like a pinpoint against a cloth, maybe the size of one of those drapes. They're huge. So these were being ejected. Now what was happening was our Earth goes around the Sun in orbit. So it looked like some of these plasmas are going near the Sun, near the Earth from the Sun, and it looked like some of them would engulf the Earth. Now two things would happen with this huge injection of plasma around the Earth's atmosphere. One, which is not very nice, is that the entire planet could be disintegrated. The second thing that is not also nice is that because of the electrical and heat coming into the planet, this could totally unstable the atmosphere of the planet as well as the entire lithosphere, and we could have gone into the equivalent of, in humans, a spasm. In the case of a planet, when it goes into spasm, it's massive earthquakes and massive windstorms and incredibly huge, unbelievable, violent storms of rain or snow, depending upon the time of year and where you were as far as you were on the planet. So the result would have been an incredible devastation of this planet. So this had to be taken care of. So the first thing that had to be done was the Earth, the sun basically, like all systems. I always have trouble drawing this thing. I like to draw it down, and then I have to realize I have to go up like that. There, I did it. I did it. Now, what these are interdimensional portal points. Now, if you want to control a planet, basically this is how a planet really operates. You have around it a magnetosphere and an electrical field, electrical grid system. The electrical grid system relatively mirrors the so-called ley lines on the planet. Now what happens is these energies coalesce around these points on this tetrahedron. What happens is, if you adjust the interportal points, you control. These might be looked upon as control points. And these go into interdimensional places where these fields flow back and forth. When I was a kid, they talked about dimensions, and they said every dimension exists really almost like a interlocked layer of an onion, in that you have the dimension itself, then you have this wall, which is the flux, and then you have the other dimension. Now basically what happens is the flux points impinge upon the dimensions, and the nature of the fluxes determines the energy points that are going in and out, and they gave me all kinds of formulas for determining the total amount of energy in any dimension, and the amount of control, and how to regulate the stability of the flux walls. So what happens is, if you want to regulate the sun and keep it from getting all screwed up, you have to go into these interdimensional flux walls with a special large amount of magnetism, which is interdimensional magnetism, which is a little bit different than the one on the third dimension, and regulate the flux wall. By regulating the flux wall, you can regulate the energy exchange. As you regulate the energy exchange, you change the polarity of the entire sun, not on this dimension, but interdimensionally. When you do that, you change the energy pattern in the sun on the third dimensional reality. It's almost as if you saw a cork bobbing in water. And of course you see and you have to say, well, how do I stop the cork bobbing in water? One way to stop it is to calm the ocean or the water around it, and it won't bob as much, but you can't see that calming happening easily. That basically is what this is all about. And for an analogy, it's not really similar to that. I don't want to get into the physics of it, or we really will be here all night. But what happens is that they did this first with the Earth. So they took the Earth and they said, well, all right, do it again. I always want to draw them the same side. There's a part of me that always wants to do that. Because they always tell me these are really multitudinous, so whenever I do that, I always want to do it that way. It's very strange. Backwards, but then I can't reach the board. So, what happens is when you put an interdimensional hologram around planet Earth, you can now use light to regulate. And light is basically what is multidimensional magnetism, it's light. That's why all these ships are beam ships that you hear about. That's why they operate on a wall of light. When light is compressed, it develops as a radiation pattern. That's why a lot of these ships, when they take off, leave these funny, strange radiation patterns around them. So, and I'm not going to get into the physics of that right now either. Then we'll really be here a long time. But that isn't what we're here for. I'm not here to give people lessons in multidimensional physics as explained to me. I'm just trying to explain points. What happens is, when you put this in, this now means that as you regulate the thickness of the hologram, you regulate the exchange of energy through the interdimensional portal points. Therefore, if a promenade was to actually come into the Earth, here's what happens. The hologram intercepts it and takes the energy off interdimensionally. Well, the residual is then adjusted through the portal point. That's why when an actual large promenade came toward our planet, it didn't burn us up. It actually was discovered that part of this was deflected interdimensionally and then back into the third dimension. The result was that they felt and saw huge solar winds that were affecting Mars and the asteroid belt behind the Earth. The reason for that was that the energy patterns were there to as proof of what the Sirens were doing to maintain the integrity of the planet. Now later on, when it was decided that the photon belt would come into our planet and our star system effectively, the same thing was done to the sun and the entire system. So the solar system that we now reside in is protected by an immense interdimensional hologram at this time. This hologram will regulate the energies coming in from the photon belt. Now this is why the potentials for difficulty and immense disaster which could have happened to this planet has not happened, because they've been able to regulate interdimensionally a vast amount of energies that have come in because of the incredible amount that the photon belt generates. The photon belt is huge. It's almost, actually it is almost 2 light years in thickness. And it's loaded with nothing but advanced, high-energy, interdimensional light, which is constantly giving off on all levels, all dimensions, energy patterns. And these energy patterns show up as gammas and other forms of radiation, which when they penetrate into the Earth can cause immense difficulties. That's why they began warning us even before there was a difficulty with the ozone about there being an ozone hole and the dangers of it. Because this is one of the pressures that occurs naturally of the photon belt coming. And though the light can regulate this holographic plate around us, this huge holographic envelope, it also has another difficulty. Some of this light must be allowed in. That meant that the ozone around the poles, which is the most difficult spot to maintain this holographic image on, would be vastly affected. Therefore, there was going to be an ozone hole whether there was a difficulty with it or not. Unfortunately for us, the problem with our pollution was that it was going to make this much more difficult. That's why they put all the warnings out and made sure that all the environmental movements emphasized the problems of the ozone and maintain the ozone as much as possible. What they have been able to do to these other aspects of the tetrahedron is in the northern and southern hemisphere begin netting over the places where most people live a slightly thicker version of this entire ozone. But you've got to remember the ozone is not very thick to start off with. If you were to take 2 quarters and put them together, that's the thickness of the ozone. It's not very thick. Okay, one more quick thing and then we're going to have our break.
And this hologram is in a cube.
It's not like a cube, I just drew it that way. Actually, if you wanted to be more accurate, I'll make another mess here. If you're going to make more accurate, what it is, it's like an oval. But the oval is shaped almost like this. Let me try to draw this crazy thing. It would bulge here, would come in, and it would bulge out here, and then it would be very thin over here, and then it would bulge out again, and bulge out, and then it would be thin like over here. It's an envelope. I didn't want to draw it accurately because I knew I can't, because I'm not a very good artist. So I like to draw it as a cube, and I just thought I'd make it easy for myself.
Why does he do that? Why does he both out like this?
It's an interdimensional. Right folds is each one of these portal points is an energy point. The energy is collected around the interdimensional portal points. As the energy is collected, it can then be controlled by regulating the flux distribution. When you regulate the flux distribution, you regulate the energy exchange. When you regulate the energy exchange, you can determine what energies go in and out of the envelope, to put it simply. So let me just do a quick summary on this whole thing as I did. Yes?
Regarding this, you mentioned a while back that the extensions out in email to put moisture in the upper atmosphere was an attempt to help with the ozone.
Right. What they did with that, I'll go into that real quick. And you guys can get your well-deserved break because you've been here forever, is the following. We'll call this the ocean, and we'll call this the atmosphere. Now, and we'll call this little thing above it the ozone layer, so we'll call this O3 for ozone, and A for atmosphere, and W for water. Now, what has happened is the following. They want to make sure that the ozone layer is maintained. So this is how it's done. You warm the waters, and then I'll call this W for warm water. You circulate it, and what happens is you create an energy pattern along the equator, which is called the El Nino effect. What you do then is you alter the jet stream. That's what we're going to call it here. We're going to call this the jet stream here in the atmosphere. You then alter it. By altering the jet stream, you then change the ionization patterns in the upper atmosphere. And if you change the ionization patterns just right, you can create chemical reactions which will overcome the depletion of O3 and help maintain it a lot better than normally it would be done, and the deterioration is then slowed. The other thing that they are doing with their special atmospheric ships is the atmospheric ships go along with their plasma and ionize large aspects of the lower atmosphere, and then this ozone can gradually drift up into the ozone layer. So this is another aspect that they are doing with their ships. So this is why they have maintained the ozone layer by maintaining it with the El Nino effect. This is why the El Nino effect, and many atmospheric scientists are amazed at how fast it has been reconstituting over the last 2 years and the length at which it maintains itself. Normally this is an effect that happens in winter like now, and totally is dissipated in the early spring like April or March. What happened last year was it lasted until August, dissipated and regrouped and showed up again in October, and is still out there. This effect is only supposed to happen about every 3 to 6 years. It has happened now for 3 years in a row. So a lot of atmospheric and oceanic scientists are a little puzzled about it all, and they're trying to invent scenarios. Basically what's happening is the devic energies have decided to use these elements to maintain certain things that the Federation and the hierarchy have agreed on, so that this will aid us in maintaining the ozone layer. Another side effect of it is that it is causing rains to occur to get us out of our drought conditions. So that's that. So let me have everybody take a little break right now, finally, and then we'll have some questions.
Sounds like we might have three more presidential elections.
Can you hear me?
They're going to be real quick. We got lots of questions, I'm sure. I just wanted to take 1 second real quick too also and thank a lot of the people that have come out and been a part of the advocate group, because at the beginning, you know, in lectures 1 through 4, we had talked about the importance and significance of advocate groups. We had a remarkable turnout in the first one. We had a room that held 32 people in 65 shows. The second one is unbelievable. It was, we had a very enchanting meeting with Peggy McConnell, and for those of you that were there, she literally flared everybody and looked everyone up with their mouth open and wondered where we found this person and everything. And so both Sheldon and Peggy gave unbelievable and incredible presentations and everything. I want to definitely thank you, Sheldon, for being a big part of that. And you brought a lot of support and help, and the things that you're doing here tonight and everything like that. I mean, it's just a real pleasure to be able to be privileged to hear this material, because I think in a lot of ways we're very special in a lot of ways.
I'll agree to that one.
Yeah. Yeah, we are, I think, because this material that we're discussing tonight is not just material you can hear just anywhere. And it's not a fluke that you're here. You're called here because we are servers, and we are being moved forward, and we are being influenced. And we come to hear some pretty extraordinary material that can't be found in a lot of places. And that is really a privilege just to even be a part of this and to see the unfoldment of some of the spiritual hierarchies plan and everything. So, with that, real quickly, at the end of tonight, I do want to encourage, Sheldon has his newsletters here that, for those of you who are new, his newsletters are simply incredible. I've had people pick these up from our meetings here and everything, and they call me up and they go, "Where did you find this guy?" You know? And I had a professor recently who came up to me when I was quoting some of the material out of this, because I had been receiving something very similar, and he said, How'd you figure it out? And I said, well, I had a really good teacher. He's a Syrian walk-in, and he's receiving the information from the spiritual hierarchy and the angelic realms and everything. And he said, it's brilliant material. It was very accurate. Not many people know about it. But you did very well, very good. So he said, where can I get one of these? And I said, well, you get all 6 of them right here. They're $3 each or $17 for the whole set. Really extraordinary, highly advised. Also, Sloopy Baru, who's my producer, our producer, and many of you know that I host a television show, Space City, a real fabulous show. And we have wonderful guests, and we've had Mr. Sheldon Nagel on no less than 4 times. 4 times. And, boy, I'll tell you, we get letters at the station and phone calls and everything, and people go, how'd you find this guy? Who is this man? I want to talk to this guy, really good. I didn't, that's a real hard one, man. Where does he come from? Well, anyway, we do have a set of tapes, and from all 4 shows, including the Advocate Group, and other lectures that he's done, a full wide assortment of tapes and everything that Sloopy Baru has over here for sale. So for any of the lectures that you missed, you can get it on tape. And it has all the action-packed material you've all been looking for and everything. So you can turn off your TV, turn on your VCR, and watch something enlightening. A lot of fun. So with that, we are going to turn the program back over to Sheldon. He's going to have his question and answer session. I'm sure you got lots of questions. So here's Sheldon Nagel.
Okay, I'll just throw it open for questions. What's the grand time? You got the timer on now? Mm-hmm. Okay. What's the grand total? 50 minutes. Okay, we got 50 glorious minutes here of questions. So, yes, Mark?
You talked a bit about the importance of setting up the light centers for this process.
Sure. Okay, you didn't get it? Okay, I will repeat it then. The question was, what is the importance of setting up the light centers? So, I will address myself to that right now. What is happening on this planet right now is this great shift that we just talked about. Now, the importance of the light centers and the industries that will come out of the light centers is important because this is a 3-way effort. Basically, you might look at it being a triangle. One part of the triangle is the light workers and enlightened beings on this planet. The other part of the triangle is the hierarchy, and then the third part is the Federation. Now, the other 2 parts of the triangle want us to prove to themselves that which they feel we already are, which are light in matter. To prove this, they are willing to give us resources to act as way of creating the so-called web of consciousness, which is the underpinning, the foundation upon which everything is going to be established. Therefore, the importance of those light centers is that's the third part of this triangle. That's us proving to the other two parts that we are indeed ready for what they are willing to give us, their great gift of enlightenment, by proving first that we are ready to receive it by putting the centers together. So that is how the three aspects work together to create the new light age. And that's why it is important, because that it might be looked upon as our payment to them for all that they are giving us in making this new energy and this new consciousness possible for us as is part of the prophecies. They're saying, we have come to give this to you in joy. All we ask of you is to receive it in joy by just doing that which is what you came here to do.
Is that light center a physical thing or a physio-spiritual thing? What is this light center?
It's both. It's both. A light center is when light workers come together to form a resource center. And the resource center is one place among many, there'll be many of them on this planet, whose purpose is really twofold. One, to allow people to do those things that are required for them to complete their mission here, whatever it is. And secondly, to give people a resource center where when they want to do what they want to do, they can go there to obtain stuff, because the centers will be connected by communication systems. They will have resources available to them so that if the resources of one center are required by another center, they can be transferred, whether it's financial, material, or people. And that's the whole process. It's creating this web of consciousness.
Is it possible that when some of the landings occur, people, whether they be humans or otherwise, might come and utilize some of the light centers as teaching?
That's what they are doing. They're trying to make people establish these centers at almost every part of the planet, because these will be resource centers originally for establishing light centers on this planet. The second part, these will be exactly what you've been talking about. They are going to be places where people can interact with the space family that will be coming down, so that we will then have a resource center for them, and they will then be able to expand that resource center with their technologies to even greater heights than we can with our technical capabilities that we have. So what it is simply, it's a foundation. We're saying to them, we are willing to serve secondly, we're willing to put these centers together to prove our service, and third, we will then utilize this service and these centers with them to complete the process so that the hierarchy, the Federation, and ourselves come together to form these networks that will allow the entire consciousness of this planet to be returned to the level that it was supposed to be and in the first place. Yes?
Is it possible that we are beginning to see the effect of the photon belt on the atmosphere of the planet? It seems that lately more and more people are going to desert. They are going off their walker. They lose it. And a lot of people also feel tired. They don't feel like they want to work anymore in the same work environment. Is it in my personal sphere that this seems to be happening?
No. What's happening here is really two things. One, the fatigue that many people are feeling is it's kind of like, well, if you were all the day were working real hard and you didn't know about it, you'd be tired too, right? What's happening is your body is being changed in its physiology, it's being changed in its energy patterns. That's why a lot of people feel tired, because basically you're being downloaded with the basic preparations for the entire new consciousness, a new body that you're going to be having shortly. So a lot of people are getting more affected by it, because a lot of people get higher octaves because of what they are. They're dealing with life, they're meditating, they're doing certain basic aspects of work. So as a result, is they're getting this a little bit higher than other people, and they're feeling that. As far as the strange increase with madness, what's happening on this planet right now The government is basically attempting through psychotronic generators to create negative energies around this planet. As people become more and more sensitive to energy patterns, then the psychotronic negative energies become more able to cause people to kind of, like you said, lose it. This is unfortunate. What is happening right now on this planet is the Federation right now and the hierarchy are putting together counter energy patterns to take this whole process and change it. So right now we're going through a transformation period. Unfortunately, when you go through a transformation period, the adjustments allow for certain things to happen that normally wouldn't happen. And that, unfortunately, is what's happening with a lot of people. They're feeling the energies, they're becoming more sensitive. Sometimes they hit frequencies that are similar to these negative psychotronic devices, and it's just like you get entrained, and they do stupid, crazy things. And that's, unfortunately, what has been happening. They're now working on trying to prevent this entrainment from becoming a level that causes these difficulties to maintain themselves.
In what way do they put them in motion, these psychotronic energies?
What has happened is when the Greys, the Reptoids, and the other groups were on this planet, as part of the treaties they signed with the American government and various other governments on this planet, were energy transfers to allow abductions and certain other things to happen, certain genetic experiments that they wanted. So the result is that the government now has this technology as part of its entire, they call it its inventory. So as a result, they have set this up in various places in the planet, mainly on the former bases that exist, underground bases that exist all around this planet, and are just beaming these wave patterns all over the place right now, attempting to try to create difficulties. One of the major areas they're concentrating on right now is two areas, basically, Chicago and Los Angeles, mainly in Los Angeles area. That's why a lot of crazy things are happening down there right now.
No, I've heard of people that they say that some kind of creatures, entities, whatever, beings come at night and what they have sensations of something being shined in their head or something like that. Who is that? Is that good being?
A lot of that is the Greys are now returning in a positive way to try to turn off a lot of the negative stuff, the negative implants. A lot of these negative implants weren't physical implants. They were etheric implants. They're implanted into the subtle bodies, and by doing this, it made it much more difficult to get rid of them. If they were a physical device, one could develop an experiment or a device in terms of an operation or a device that could take it out. Because of this, it requires the special people trained in certain kinds of etheric energy removal to get rid of these things. And they're very, very difficult to get rid of, because since they're a holographic pattern, basically, if you get rid of the pattern, but you leave a part of the pattern in, even though you thought you'd completely gotten rid of it, it can regenerate the whole pattern all over again. So many times a psychic will come along who's trained and think they've gotten rid of the pattern in somebody, and then a day or two later, that pattern, they may have left a multitude, a real microcosm of something left, or have reconstituted that entire implant in the body all over again. So this is one of the problems happening. And what the Greys are doing right now are coming back and removing these psychic etheric implants from people right now on a large scale. And a lot of people it's being done in a way that makes them remember that it happened. Because one of the basic aspects of this whole plan is that the Federation, which are now part of the Federation, is to make people remember that there is something greater than themselves around them. And so now they're letting people remember it, whereas before the whole giant process was to make them forget. Yes?
It brings up a point, and I think it goes back to the Greeks. Basically, you're talking about three different people: the pneumatic coin, the psychic coin, and the clay people, which are known as the hook coin, right?
Yeah.
So the most material, the most gross materialist, as far as people go, who see the hook coin. They wouldn't have any psychic awareness at all, but the psychic coin do. But the pneumatic coin is spiritual people, the most advanced. Can you relate, in regards to what you're talking about here, these three here, are they being now transformed?
Well, basically, we're having a transformation. The minimum one is basically what most humans got mutated into on this planet. And what's happening is we are moving back toward full consciousness, becoming a spirit in matter being. So this is the whole process that is basically happening on this planet right now. Basically, that happened in the end of Atlantis, this experiment which got messed up because of all the things that the people in charge of it had going on as far as political intrigue. But I'm not going to get into all those revolutions, etc. But what it created in us was a being that was meant to be a servant group. That's why we're constantly look around. That's why people who play hierarchy on this planet or play leader or promise absolute leadership will get an immediate response because we have been programmed genetically to act that way. So we are now being transformed back into what we are supposed to be. And that is the key to what's now happening right now. We are being changed into a being of full consciousness instead of this partial control being that we are right now.
So in other words, the psychotronic weapons have no effect at all on the spiritual...
No, they have very little effect on them because they're able to mutate it. Okay. We were talking about traditionally, just get rid of the Greek words of it, there's three different types of beings. There's a purely physical being with practically no spiritual concept, a second being that's mental as well as physical, and then a third being that's spiritual beside all the other points. The third one is the full conscious being that I'm talking about. And this basically what we're talking about is, does this concept relate to what we're talking about? And the answer to that basically is yes. Okay, does that answer that? Okay, just keep doing what you have to do. Okay?
So if I feel like a really radical emotional shift in myself that seems to be coming from nowhere, it could be the result of such a being.
Yeah. What's happening is, okay. What Mark was asking was, if you have a sudden unexplained feeling or energy around you, could this be from these different types of psychotronic devices? For the most part, that's what's been happening to a lot of people, because this whole concept that they're trying to do is to create emotion. Because they believe that if they maintain you in a very deep emotional pattern, they can then move you gradually back into the fear pattern if they haven't already got you there to start off with. And basically how the governments operate is that since the beginning of us as a mutant human species, the control concept was fear. So if they maintain a fear concept around you, they can control you. It's almost like a cattle prod for humans. It defines your limitations, it defines your parameters of maximization. So what happens is you get into full consciousness, basically the first thing you're taught is why all basic so-called occult or light knowledge is about, or high religious knowledge is about, is getting people out of the concept of fear and into the concept of love. Because love is above fear, it dissipates fear, it gets rid of the whole concept of fear, and becomes therefore something that is totally uncontrollable. So that's why any kind of energy that creates a love energy is one that the people who are attempting to control us basing upon this concept of fear will attempt to control in any way. That's why any concept of love on this planet, the governments work in some way to try to control how it relates to people on this planet, because that gets rid of their control grid.
Do invocations of the rays of the archangel help to create spaces around us so that we can be protected from...
Right. This helps us with protection. Like I said at the beginning, the angels are here for one purpose, to serve us in joy, because they feel that we are a spiritual essence just as they are. It's just that we are a physical essence with spirit, where they are a purely etherical spiritual essence. They are here to serve us because they want to rejoice in our being in the physical. And therefore, anytime you will call upon them with any invocation of any sort, then as long as you do it with a strong positive intention behind it, it will manifest itself. So,
you know, when you mention government, are you talking about the government, the administration that's in place now?
that's it.
So if they're making if they're doing things to us to make us change, why can't they change them?
The way we're going to change them is, you might call it I call it the guillotine effect. So basically, that's why last March 5th, the Federation simply said that we're tired of playing with these guys because they totally play a game with us that is control, and that's not what this is all about. This is all about people being allowed to be in freedom and full consciousness. This is all about people being allowed to totally express their basic energy patterns with one another. This is totally about their missions being allowed to happen. It's not about an economic structure that says you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's not about a system that tells them what to do like as though they're a very 5-year-old that doesn't know what it's all about in the world and has to be controlled. That isn't what it's all about in the real spiritual universe. So we're basically, the government structures of this planet are a giant aberration of what is the true concept of government on this entire system that exists around us, the various star systems of the Federation. So they want to move us into that. The governments don't want that because they know that that's the end of their control as they want it right now. So the war going on right now is between whether or not they will allow or permit it. Like, for instance, the things they're doing right now is they're enlarging the areas around where all their different developments are. They're enlarging the areas. They're bringing more weaponry in. Like, for instance, they have particle weapons, they have psychotronic weapons, they have chips, etc. But all of that stuff that they have, whether it's the American government, the Canadian government, or whatever, is nothing compared to what's out there. At the most, they have maybe 50 or 60 or 80 or 90,000 ships. We're talking about millions of ships landing. We're talking about millions of archangels around the planet. You know, when you talk about, you try to delineate the angels, you can get books like a library. I mean, there's so many of them that you could probably take, if you tried to say all their names, it'd probably take you 2 lifetimes to say them all. There's an incredible amount of them out there. They want to manifest the energies around us to allow us to be what we are supposed to be, and they are going to be manifesting physically for us, as they rarely do, mostly since the time of the Bible, on occasional visions to people. But what they are doing is they're going to manifest themselves totally around the entire planet, and they're going to allow the ships to come in with them. And then what's going to happen is they are going to act, the hierarchy and the Federation, as an interim government until our full consciousness understands exactly how to operate in this system, which they say at the maximum will be 17 years, because by the time we are ready to go interdimensional and change completely this entire planet, we will understand the meaning of what a true galactic civilization and its governing structure is all about. So what we're going through is a shift away from government and economics as we know it now to a system that seems in many ways to be almost like something people talk about when they go into a near-death experience or a meditation and talk about what happens in heaven. And that basically is what is happening. That's why they talk about in Revelations of heaven coming to earth. That's basically what is going to happen on this planet.
Is that why the pyramid, the records in the pyramid are stating they stopped at the year 2012 and 13?
Right. Right.
So that's a correlation.
Everything is correlating to this date.
I have a question. When you first were talking about the energy that was around the Earth, the fluctuating energy that was coming out from the hemisphere of the Earth to the sun that created this.
Right. Well, right. What happened on this planet? This is the one thing that when people talk about physics, physics talks about magnetism and electricity and force fields. Okay, I got to pause. Okay, I've been allowed to start again. So what happens is there's another energy pattern that science doesn't recognize with all its inverse square laws and all the other laws of science that has to do with orbital mechanics. What they don't have is the concept of an interdimensional energy and how this interdimensional energy actually acts. And the basis of this interdimensional energy is psychic group energy. When we as a planet started changing our balance patterns, because we are the intermediary, then we started changing the pattern given back to the sun. Since we are a major aspect of this all, even though we are, if people were to look at the mass of the star system, the Earth is an infinitesimal minor part of it. Astronomers will constantly give you a big lecture about that. But the key point about this planet is, this planet has a large-scale human life form on it. What this means is that we have this extra large concept of the psychic control energy on it. When we as humans, as a group, formally began buying into the whole concept of government, that there was only one reality, and that we could move outside of nature to create that reality, we started sending this huge, unbalanced, interdimensional energy pattern into this entire star system, which affected the sun and unbalanced it. And that created this difficulty, because as it built up over the centuries, it finally reached a critical point, and then it happened. That's why the holographic envelope was required to save this planet, so that it could then be decided what was to be done with us, so that we would be decided whether to be allowed to be returned to full consciousness or be allowed to complete in the next decade or two our extinction pattern, which we had already established.
During the time that the Syrians had created this holographic ball around us, what was happening to us during that time? Were we in a state of animation, like waiting, and then they changed and shifted us somehow? And
what it allowed us to do was allowed us to make one great final shift in light. Now, what the hierarchy had been doing basically since the beginning of the century is bringing in, with every generation, groups that were more and more committed to the concept of light. And they were talking about, by the end of this century, having a critical mass that was required to make a great change. And so they asked, basically, that what they had been doing with this planet be allowed to continue. And therefore the Syrians, based upon the authority of the Central Sun Council, brought in this hologram. And then turned around to their fellow members of the Federation in their regional council and asked them if they wanted to maintain the change pattern by aiding it, or if they did not want to. And they added that the spiritual hierarchy wanted to do this, had been doing all this, because they have the final say on who gets incarnated and who doesn't get incarnated, because they assign the angel patterns, they make the final judgments, etc., etc., etc. So under celestial law, which is the ultimate law of creation, they make the final judgment. So they were just simply saying that the Federation has to listen to what the other guardian species, the cetaceans, and the hierarchy were saying about what they wanted for this star system, the solar system, and this planet. And they are saying that the critical mass of energy, of light energy among the human populace, which are to be new guardians, is happening. And therefore, the pattern that the scientists from the Federation come up with about this disaster scenario, and therefore the extinction of humans and the ending of the whole karmic pattern, was erroneous, and that a new pattern had to be followed. And this was, of course, in the 80s finally accepted. And when it was finally accepted, this then allowed the complete changeover in policy of the Federation. And then the Federation began looking at ways to aid this whole process. And this then allowed the next step to happen, which was changing the polarity of the sun and allowing this now incredible entire solar system envelope of a hologram to be completely put around us to protect not only us on this Earth, but the entire star system as it entered the photon belt.
so when the energies of the photon belt that are already present out there, so it's actually the hologram is preventing it from us experiencing it? Like
Experiencing it as it could be. See, there are two alternatives. The natural alternative, which many of the psychics were picking up, was this giant, incredible, unbelievable disaster. So they were picking that up because it was out there. The energy that was preventing it was the hologram around the planet. So they were picking up the energy pattern that was there, because that had been set up already through Federation scientists and other spiritual aspects. Now the hierarchy had asked the Syrians to put this envelope around the planet. When in the late 80s, the Federation began shifting its whole concept of what to do with this place to actually allow the full consciousness civilization to occur. Then they permitted the scientists of the Federation to complete the envelope and put it around the entire star system, from the Oort all the way into the sun and back out again. So we are encased in this huge envelope. So now the planet as well as the star system were ready for this gradual shift. Actually, it's not gradual because it's going to happen very fast. A couple decades is very fast evolutionary-wise. But what we're going to have is a change that will be totally positive, and that now the hierarchy and the Federation can regulate together. And that's why the Federation now is acting with the hierarchy to do this. And the thing that totally convinced everybody was that the Sirens were willing to stick their necks out and totally allow this race of humans to be put into its final destiny, which is to return to full consciousness, and as a fully conscious being, be allowed to finally achieve the destiny as planetary steward and as solar system steward that they were supposed to have done in the first place before what I call the Atlantean detour happened. So this also corresponds to the last time roughly we were in the photon belt, which roughly around 10, 11,000 years ago. So we are now entering it again, only this time the karmic opportunity is there to counter it. This is what the hierarchy knew. And this is what they finally got the Federation to agree to on all its spiritual councils as well as the councils that exist in this dimension as well. So this is what is going to be happening right now. In fact, that's what is happening right now.
Does that mean that the ice age is also suspended because of the...
Right. What's going to happen to this planet is that we're not going to have, over the next 2 decades, a global warming. We're not going to have an ice age. We're not going to have a polar shift. We're not going to have a vast destruction of the continents, etc., etc., etc. What we're going to have happen to this planet is it's going to be changed back to basically what is talked about in the beginning of Genesis. The planet is going to be returned to what it was. It's going to have its firmament back, which are the two ice layers that existed in the atmosphere. This is going to create an atmosphere that is a mature atmosphere. As a mature atmosphere, it does not have sudden changes in its atmosphere as far as winds and weather. So basically, those people who have grown up with weather and feel that weather is an important part of their reality are in for a giant shock. When the firmament happens, there's not going to be any real weather. Every day it's going to be sunny. Temperatures are going to be in the lower to upper 70s. The wind's going to be at the most 5 miles an hour. You can almost, the weather department will almost have to just get one big giant bulletin board and put it up and say, from this part to this part of the planet, and that'd be the same for about all year. So it's going to be a vast shift from the reality that we now have around us at this time.
I've been taught that this process has far-reaching implications for God consciousness in terms of, for the first time in the history of time, there's the opportunity for an integration of the human and the divine, and that this planetary process is a feeding process for this entire larger process?
Yeah, it's part of it, because what is happening to this planet right now is a planet that was set up from its beginning as what's called a mass demonstration planet or show planet. And this is further added to the fact that there are prophecies in different species all over this galaxy that are intelligent, fully sentient, about this planet when it achieves this full consciousness again, leading to light engulfing this entire galaxy, and this galaxy being raised up to even higher dimensions. So what is happening to this planet is not only something that is going to cause a vast change in our reality, it's also something that's going to cause a vast change in the reality of this entire galaxy. So as a result, what is happening here has been causing an incredible change in the entire makeup of the galaxy that exists around us. And as a result, this planet's shift, this planet's change, it might be looked upon as Many have said to me, this is the change on a microcosm level that leads to the change of light on the macrocosm level as far as this galaxy goes.
If third dimension was created in order to help in the evolution of God through the dialectic of good and light and dark, how does God evolve once we've gotten into third dimension?
What happens is we move into a whole concept of the nature of what the spirit is. The spirit then becomes that which can manifest, and spirit then has to learn what manifesting in matter is all about on higher levels. Because once you learn to manifest on higher levels, the science or the laws of science that we know it on this third dimension no longer become viable. We move into what is almost a magic-like science, what a lot of physicists that talk about the Big Bang like to call the pre-physics, the physics of anything, the ultimate quantum physics. And this is basically what we are going to be involving ourselves toward. Thus, our minds become that which can create any science that we wish. But we have to learn that this abundance of creation has a responsibility. And so the next step up is the responsibility of learning what abundance is and how it relates to your reality. And that's what's coming into our next reality. When we learn that matter and spirit are one, but they also, as matter, have the ability to manifest energies of incredible abilities, of vastly different things. So, in a way, we almost have the ability to manifest other dimensions that we don't know about yet. But we have to understand what this means to our reality. How does this affect our spirituality? How does it affect our relationship of our spirituality to our body, which we now have complete control over? How does this relate to the relationship of this body and our own thoughts to others, to other dimensions? This is a whole concept that we don't know about right now. This we'll be playing with and utilizing when we come into this next level. So this change in third dimension to other dimensions is a change in responsibility and in management. And this is the responsibility that we're moving from, just as the free will given us in the third dimension was a special responsibility as well that had to be understood so that we could learn the enjoyment that comes from using it. That lump in the throat had a hard time coming out there.
My understanding is we're dealing with dimensions around what is dialectic nature, okay, one nature order. Then there's the higher nature order, which is that which is the ineffable.
Right.
Which is the substance within us, is the spark. So
Right.
Christ spark.
Right.
And does that mean that in the process we have to go through is transfiguration? We cannot enter that higher realm without that. Is that
Right. What we're doing is the transfiguration change is this rise into full consciousness. But with it comes responsibility. The responsibility is understanding what love truly is and how to relate to it. For love manifests all things, and love is all things. So now we have to fully understand that. That's why the Christ energy anchored this whole thing first, because we have to understand that the basis of this whole thing is manifesting through love. And that the next step is understanding what this all means and how to expand this love outward. Not only for ourselves, but for all humanity and all creation around us. And that's the next basic aspect that we will have as we move out of the third dimensional. The third dimensional was understanding there is a free will. We can understand love as a series of choices. But now we have to understand that love is more than just a series of choices. It's a concept of manifestation. And that's why the Christ energy came here to show us that this energy is indeed a series of choices. You could even go all to the point of letting someone kill you, but it is above all of that. It is a spiritual energy that controls through love everything in the universe. And if you will tie into that universe, as I said, you'll become immortal totally and become one with that energy. Because love encompasses all and love is all. And that's the basic energy pattern that we are moving towards at the present time. Okay, how much longer then? Okay, we have another 10 minutes at the most. Yes?
I have a rather simple question. In one of your previous lectures, you mentioned that Lady Gaia, or Mother Earth, was going to require that the cement be removed from the cities, and that 20 years from now, we would not recognize San Francisco as it is today.
Right.
I was wondering how that was going to happen.
The same way all things in a full-dimensional consciousness happen. All concrete is made up of molecules and atoms. Presently, we know that we can dissipate molecules and atoms using vibrational patterns, using sound and light. If one uses the sound and light patterns, one can also recreate all life forms, because all life forms are stored in the etheric. Thus, we can very rapidly alter a city and transfer it back into what it was, even taking so-called extinct species and returning them to the earth. The key, once again, is the concept I'm talking about of manifestation. This is why Gaia wants us to cooperate and be a part of this whole process. We are going to be provided with a way and a pattern to live in this planet, such that we do not interfere directly with the life forces of this energy pattern, but actually aid it. Thus we will be given places just as people in the inner worlds now are given places on this planet to develop cities and have everything they need in those cities. Our role, our energy, is to come together and be one with the Gaia force to encourage the energies of that force. So that basically is what's going to happen. We're going to have this huge shift, but the shift is not going to happen rapidly. They want us, over the next 5 to 10 years after the landings, after the photon belt, to aid the process, to actually be a part of the change, so that we know that what has happened here is a part of what is that we want for this planet, beside what the hierarchy and the Federation is establishing for this planet, so that we realize that we are here as an invited guest of the hierarchy, but we're also here to understand the concepts of how the creation that is constantly evolving in the universe operates. So this is to be meant as a process of a teaching for us, as well as a learning for them of how we will relate to these teachings that will be given to us. Okay, 2 minutes, so this will be the last question.
Could we say then that we're becoming more atmospheric?
No, we'll be what I like to call a semi-etheric being, which basically means that if everyone us was to look at each other, we would still see the same. But if we were in a true third-dimensional reality, we could like walk through these walls without even worrying about it. But what it means is that we still need to eat, we still need to have a place of shelter, etc. These will be provided in special caverns that are going to be set up under grid systems, and we are also going to move out into the different other planets that are capable of supporting life in this solar system. Therefore, we are going to change into a whole different pattern. If people were to go to many of the cities in the Federation right now, and then see the planets that they're on, they would wonder, where are these cities? Because if they went and scanned the planets, they would seem like they're virtually unoccupied. We are going to be living in worlds that we are going to be creating pockets just below the surface, in which all the light patterns and everything else that is required for our life is there. We will have devices that will allow us to have food, we will have shelter, we will have clothing, but it will not be anything that impinges upon the plant and the animal life of this planet. We are here to be provided as a guardian species. We are here to use our energies with the devic energies and the angelic energies to create the forms of life and make this planet evolve and maintain it at the maximum levels that it's supposed to be at. Therefore, when people come in to visit it, they'll be allowed to see what's going on this planet, to go to the cities, etc., and maybe even in certain limited aspects to visit certain aspects. I used to be given dreams before I started this whole thing. I'd be given these dreams where I would see these huge temples that are about the only thing that are going to be left above surface, and you would go to these huge temples, and all around you would be perfectly natural views. Forests would be back, grasslands would be back, etc. And there was one temple that was located, what to the best of my ability is what today would be the southern part of San Francisco, maybe down in the Glen Park or the St. Francis Wood area. And I was looking at this area, I was trying to find the skyline, because they said this is a peninsula area, right at the edge of the peninsula, where the city comes down and creates the peninsula. And I said I couldn't find anything. And they explained that what had happened to this place, because this is supposed to be like a century from now, that what had happened was that this entire area had been changed back. And one of the things they did with me, they allowed me, because you had your light body, to just go up, and you would look up, and sure enough, you could see there was no Golden Gate, there was no skyscrapers. All it was the original way this place looked long, long ago, and it was really amazing. And ever since I've seen that site, and I look, and I've come many times to look at, start driving around the Bay Area, and I see what I saw, and I see what it looked like, and I see the way it looks now, and a part of me gets weird about it, because it looks so beautiful, and I say, this must have been what the early Spanish explorers saw when they first came here, when it was just an incredible place, because you saw these huge, unbelievable forests. Anyway, I won't get into it. I have been warned by the editor that I have to cut. So the producer...
One quick question.
Well, it won't be on tape, but... Well, we have to be out of here by 11. That's why she's screaming at me.
It's really quick. If I do want to go wind surfing and it's 25 knots northwesterly, what planet can I go to?
You'll have to ask the hierarchy what's permitted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Whoops, blowing my